Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's get right into it, because today we're unpacking one of the most explosive, dramatic, and honestly ironic stories in modern business history. We are going all the way back to the dawn of the automotive industry to witness the birth of Chevrolet. Now, this isn't just a story about cars. No, this is a story about an ousted visionary totally desperate to reclaim his throne, a hot-headed, thrill-seeking racer, and a scrappy startup that literally bought an empire. It's a tale packed with massive egos, brilliant engineering, and an ultimate tragic irony that absolutely still resonates today.
Okay, let's dive into this mystery. When you hear the name Chevrolet, what actually comes to mind? A shiny Corvette? Maybe a rugged pickup truck? You probably don't picture a Swiss-born daredevil who started out racing bicycles before becoming one of the most famous and fearless automobile racers of his time. But Louis Chevrolet was exactly that. He was a gifted mechanic, a totally uncompromising engineer, and a guy who spent nearly 3 years of his early life in hospitals, just recovering from brutal racing crashes. I mean, on the track, he was a massive superstar. But as a businessman, well, that's where the mystery of the forgotten founder truly begins.
To really wrap your head around the weight of this story, consider this number: 7.5 seconds. That is how often a new Chevrolet is sold somewhere in the world today. Every 7.5 seconds. It's a global behemoth, the fourth largest automotive brand on the planet. We're talking millions of cars, billions of dollars, all carrying one man's surname across the globe. But here is the ultimate, heartbreaking irony of the whole shebang. The man whose name is on all of those vehicles, the guy who engineered the very first Chevrolet, Louis himself, died in poverty. Long before the company transformed into the global juggernaut we just talked about, Louis literally walked away, having sold the rights to his own name. He never saw a dime of the massive fortune that his namesake generated. So how does something like that even happen? Well, to answer that, we have to look at exactly how this company got its start.
Part 1, The Odd Couple Setup, featuring Durant and Chevrolet.
And this brilliantly illustrates how our story kicks off. We're in the startup-heavy atmosphere of 1910s Detroit. You have to think of it like the Silicon Valley of its day. Literally everyone was trying to cash in on this huge new automobile craze. And right in the middle of this chaotic gold rush, two completely mismatched protagonists cross paths. On one side, we have William C. Durant. He's basically an automotive Steve Jobs, a ruthless business pragmatist who had actually founded General Motors only to be ousted by his own board of directors. He is hungry for a comeback, and he is obsessed with mass market dominance. On the other side, we have Louis Chevrolet, known as the daring Frenchman. He's an uncompromising Swiss engineer. All he cares about is luxury, high performance, and winning races. So you have a businessman who wants to build cheap cars for the masses, paired with a total purist who wants to build heavy, fast, incredibly expensive machines. Part 2, 1911, the birth of the brands. So Durant was an absolute master marketer. He officially incorporated the Chevrolet Motor Company in November 1911, and he chose the name Chevrolet simply because it sounded French, sexy, exotic, and of course, it carried the massive star power of Louis' racing career. He truly believed the name alone evoked power and European sophistication. But take a look at their very first product, the 1912 Classic 6. This car highlighted their massive divide. This was Louis' dream brought to life right here. It was a beautifully crafted, six-cylinder luxury vehicle. The only problem, it was priced at $2,500. In 1912, that was a staggering amount of money. So while it perfectly matched Louis' vision of an elite automobile, it was just way too expensive for the average buyer, and it ended up being a total commercial flop. Only a few hundred were ever even made. What's also really fascinating is the mystery surrounding the famous golden bow tie logo, which actually debuted right around this time. Where did it come from? Well, there are completely conflicting theories. The official corporate story is that Durant was inspired by a repeating pattern he saw on the wallpaper of a Parisian hotel back in 1908. They say he even tore off a piece to bring home. But on the other hand, Durant's own daughter, Marjorie, claimed in her book that he literally just doodled the original design at the dinner table one night while sketching out nameplates. Whichever story is actually true, that little emblem would go on to be printed billions of times. Part 3, The Great Divide and a Serious Clash of Visions. By 1913, the underlying tension between these two reached an absolute boiling point. Durant was watching Henry Ford sell the cheap Model T like hotcakes, and he wanted to pivot heavily to mass-market four-cylinder cars. But Louis completely rejected this. He felt that slapping his famous racing name on some budget vehicle was a massive insult to his engineering prowess and his reputation. And the clashes were getting intensely personal and honestly a bit absurd.
Durant was trying to project this high-class corporate image, so he even demanded that Louis stop smoking his cheap cigarettes and switch to expensive cigars instead. No way, right? For a proud, stubborn racer like Louis, this micromanagement and the shift toward budget cars was just the final straw. The fracturing culminated in this incredible, defining quote from Louis. "I will not sell my personality." He completely, absolutely refused to compromise.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Part 4, the ultimate corporate comeback.
So once Louis was out of the picture, William Durant was completely free to execute his master plan. And it's a jaw-dropping, rapid-fire sequence of events from here. In 1913, Louis walks away, and crucially, he sells his shares and the rights to his name. The very next year, 1914, Durant pivots the company and releases the much more affordable Royal Mail Roadster, which becomes an instant hit. Then, in 1915, he introduces the Model 490, literally named because it cost exactly $490, perfectly undercutting the Ford Model T. Sales absolutely explode. And then comes the ultimate corporate coup. By September 1915, Durant uses his massively inflated Chevrolet stock to buy up a controlling interest in General Motors. Just let that sink in. The scrappy little startup had just swallowed the giant that had fired Durant years earlier. Durant was back on top, playing the ultimate reverse Uno card. But what happened to Louis? Well, the postscript here is just deeply tragic. Louis did find some later success in racing. He even designed the winning cars for the Indianapolis 500 in the early 1920s with his new company Front and Neck. But between financial crashes, the Great Depression, and just sheer bad luck, he was completely wiped out. By the mid-1930s, Louis Chevrolet actually had to return to General Motors, but not as an executive. He returned as a humble mechanic, working on the assembly line for the very brand he co-founded. He died in 1941, struggling with illness and financial distress, entirely separated from the empire that bore his name. Which brings us to a lingering, deeply philosophical question to close this explainer out. Is a legacy printed on billions of cars actually worth dying penniless for? Louis Chevrolet refused to compromise his ideals, and it quite literally cost him a vast fortune. Yet because he stayed so incredibly true to his vision, his name became immortal. It represents the very spirit of automotive innovation today. It's just an incredible piece of history to reflect on the next time you see that golden bow tie out on the road. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning the stories behind the brands you see every day.